Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pit Stop 16. And today, Andy and I, we're going to talk about something that I've been thinking a lot about recently. The idea of self help and, people wanting to improve themselves, however, never actually, call it embodying it or actually doing anything about it and just educating themselves and, just having a conversation about that. So I'm excited to dig into this with you, Andy.
Yeah, man. I love coming on to your show and to add value in any way I can. Right. I think this is like what, the fourth or fifth time or something, maybe more, that I've been on.
Yeah, I was going over the episodes and it's getting up there. Like you've been on a lot, and no, I actually it was funny too because I was just looking at it today and I was like, holy shit! Like this is the 16th pit stop, and I think I have like 32 episodes on up already, and so cool just like to take a little bit of a step back and be like, oh wow, like the numbers are getting up there. So that's pretty cool. It's
Yeah.
a lot more than I was expecting to do when I set out doing this. So.
Good thing. That's a good thing. So, I actually never had a chance to ask you this, if you don't mind me asking. Kind of
Yeah.
just that. It's like, why did you call it pit stop? Is there like a meaning behind that?
I wish there was a better meaning. So it came from, originally it was like, okay, it's the journey with Jared. So I'm gonna be talking to people about their journeys, right? And so it's like pretty straightforward of interviewing someone, it's their journey. And then it happened when COVID hit and I couldn't really interview people anymore. And I was just like, okay, well, I'll just do like random deep dives on topics. And I was like, okay, well, I better have a name for it, just something. And I was like, what's something that happens on a journey? I'm like, oh, pit stop, cool. And I didn't give it any more thought than that.
Yeah. I like it because it doesn't have like things don't have to have deep meanings, but still serve like a big purpose, right? And I feel like for you, it just kind of like worked out branding wise, right? Journey, you're on the road, you make a pit stop. It's
Yeah,
cool. So
yeah,
thanks for the context.
of course, yeah. So yeah, I guess just getting into it. First, just kind of opening it up to your experiences and what you've seen in people that have gone through this. Of they might not even realize it themselves, but it's them reading nonstop books and like books and education, whatever it might be. However, sort of noticing that they're not actually putting it into practice in their own lives. So yeah, just your experiences, what you've noticed, everything like that.
Yeah, I think the first few things that kind of come up for me right away is just kind of around the era that we live in. We live in an information and technology world, and it's moving at a very fast pace. Right, computers are faster than ever. Audiobooks download quicker than ever. PDFs, you have your Kindles and Kobos, and like, you name the tool, it's there. You name the book, it's in your hands in seconds. Like, information is traveling so fast, and it's really hard to keep up with everything. And I think that there's a story that sometimes people carry around with them, is like, I have to keep up with everything.
Yeah.
And so I think when we carry around that story, what ends up happening is we try to consume as much as we can, because there's a bit of like this FOMO. Oh my God, there's so much good, content being put out there, and I'm not reading enough fast enough, or I'm not learning fast enough. And so I just got to consume so much. And I would say the byproduct or the symptom of like overconsumption of information is that we do nothing with it.
Yeah.
You know, we
I,
do we do nothing with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually love that. And, that's why I always like having conversations about topics like this because it's, perspectives that aren't top of mind for me. And, as soon as you said it, I just went like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
There's so much information out there now. And not only that, but it's also, I would call it the recommendations. Right.
Totally.
Of now, it's not only like, the people that that would recommend things to you. It's like you can easily go online and see, thousands of recommendations for this book or this course or whatever it might be. And
Yep.
so, yeah, you could go your entire life with the amount of information and the amount of recommendations that are out there, just looking at new things.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, It's so interesting because, just this morning I had a client, and he was talking about a book that he was reading a few months ago and a book that he's reading now. And he's like, they're saying the exact same thing, but in a different way. But I don't know why this book is resonating with me so much more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we can like step back a bit and like look at all this information and be like, oh, you know what? I think maybe like 10 people in this area are actually saying the same thing. So, I would say like a really great approach is like, yo, like instead of consuming all 10, do some research on the person that's writing it.
Mm.
And, does their voice, does their personality, does their story resonate with you? And then maybe start there. Right.
Yeah.
But I see that a lot though, man. Like to answer your initial question, it's like, man, there's just a lot of information and we want it all, right? We want it all and we want it fast. And so I think that's just kind of where we're at. And, my own journey with it just quickly here is like, man, like I love learning. I didn't start loving learning until I was in my like mid to late 20s.
Okay.
High school, college, man, if I didn't have to learn or like spend time with a book, I didn't. Right. But then something clicked in me where I just I started a business, and that's kind of where my self-growth journey began. It was like, okay, if I'm running a business, I probably be beneficial to me to educate myself in certain areas. And so then began the journey of educating myself, books, podcasts, all this stuff. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, I'm just kind of curious too of, just kind of your mindset around that of why it all of a sudden started sinking in, of like, okay, so I should start educating myself around things. And then, you start, and was it this like, holy crap, I'm so much more productive? Or was it just for the first time in your life, it was, you learning about things that you would actually enjoy or that you could see applying and improving your life? Or was it just actually enjoying the information? Like, can you go a little bit deeper into why all of a sudden, when you started your business of, what was that drive between or behind
Yeah.
actually continuing and learning?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Jared. I feel like all the reasons you stated has truth in it.
Yeah.
Uh, I would add that for myself, I think there was a moment where I began to realize that the success of my business was directly tied to the success and the health of myself.
Mm,
Right? It was that
yeah.
if I wasn't taking care of this, of this and of this, my heart, my mind, and my body,
Yeah.
my business actually suffered from it, right? And so I saw a direct correlation where the more I educated myself, the more I integrated what I was learning, which we'll get into,
Yeah.
uh, the more my business started bringing in the results that I wanted to bring in. And I think a lot of people, even business owners, they don't make that correlation off the bat, right?
Mm,
They look at it two separate things. But like, philosophy that I really hold close to my heart is that how we do one thing is how we do most things. How we show up one way is how I would say, out of integrity and consistency, should show up in other areas too.
yeah.
And not, even though they're two separate things in our lives, they're actually more woven in together than we realize. So I would say that's the biggest point, man. It's like I
Yeah.
began to realize that the connection between the two.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up because that's been on my mind a lot recently too. And I don't know why. I think it came up in our group of, the idea that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And
Yeah.
it's just really stuck in my brain, this last week here of, really sinking in and, like realizing just how true it is. And I don't know why, but, my mind goes to something else that, I think it actually came up at football and one of my coaches said it. Right. And it's something along the lines of, your character is your actions when nobody is watching.
Yeah. I deeply
Right.
resonate with that. Yeah.
Yeah, of like how hard you're going to work or what you're doing when nobody is watching, when you're not just doing it because you're being watched, right? And yeah, I don't know why that came up for me, but for me, they're very, very intertwined in my mind. So
Yeah. So like that saying that you just had there, like, how does that relate to your journey? Because this is Jared's journey, right? How does that relate to your journey around how you perform when no one's looking versus when you show up in real life?
It's funny because I remember hearing that at a very young age,
Yeah,
probably in junior high, and it stuck with me so heavily
yeah,
of just, like really, really baking in the importance of, you know, like how you act and your actions when nobody's around,
yeah,
right? And I think that that really has helped me with my work ethic,
yes,
because a lot of times, I find myself not feeling not feeling the pressure to work harder when people are watching, and working just as hard when they're not, right? And whether that was me when I was in the office by myself, or like when I was at home working, or whatever it might be, it was more of that. I need to get my shit done because I
hmm,
want to get it done, and it doesn't matter where I'm at or who's around me or whatever it might be. Which is
right,
so funny because it's very different from how I still looked for affirmation from others. And, one of my other big realizations, and something that I've been working on, is I was still looking for the affirmation of others. However, the way I was getting there and the work ethic was dependent on myself. And
right.
so, this weird, like, almost dichotomy of very different, ways that I responded to the different areas of my life. So,
Yeah, love that, man.
yeah,
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, of
And
course.
I think to just help frame up this conversation too,
Mm.
I think that we should talk a little bit about the differences between, educating and embodying something, right? Because a lot of times, I find that people find it hard to draw that line between, well, I now know it, and therefore I I know it and I don't need to do anything else. But there is actually a difference between knowing it and actually doing it and embodying it, and, putting it into practice. And so just how you think about those two separate terms.
Yeah, I remember one of my mentors telling me, it's like, he's like, you can read about snowboarding in a textbook or on the internet all you want.
Yeah.
You don't get on a board, you don't know how to snowboard.
Yeah.
You can watch, as many tutorial videos as you want. If you don't actually attach any action to it, you're not going to learn,
Yeah.
or you're not going to get better, right? And so, yeah, education is of the mind, embodiment is of the body. Like, like think about, like, even the word embodiment, like the word body is in there, right? It's
Yeah.
like, so to me, it's like, what can we do with our body, right? To take what we've been educated on and actually put it out there, right?
Mm.
Now, even that formula for me is still incomplete, because I always like to bring in this other element of intention.
Yes.
What's your intent with learning this? What's your intent with embodying what you just learned? Why are you, it's like a Simon Sinek, right? Starting with why. Why
Yeah.
are you doing it? Because, again, like, in the world of fast information traveling at all different directions, we can end up doing something that isn't meant or aligned with who we are in this moment, and where we actually want to go,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
the intention, I would say the intention matters even more than the education, because I can go off and learn about you know baking cupcakes right now, but that doesn't mean anything to me. I'd be wasting my time and energy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I love that. And that's, right in line with mine. And, I think the other part for myself, though, is also, a little bit of reimagining what education means.
Hmm.
And especially it rings true for me because, as you know, I hate reading books and I push against it. And I can't force myself to sit down and actually read many books. And so, a lot of times, education can come in a lot of different forms, whether it's, doing something, or listening to someone, or reading about it, whatever it might be. And for me, I think the other one for embodiment is, not just doing it once or twice,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
But actually making, a significant change over time, or putting it into practice over time, right?
Mhm.
And, kind of like going back to your analogy of the snowboarding, of still, right? Like, if you strap into a snowboard one time, you still don't know how to snowboard, right? You do need to do it multiple times over a period, to, in my mind, to really embody it and not just check the box. Because I feel like that's what it
Yeah.
comes down to a lot of times is I'm checking the box, right? I read this book about mindfulness. I'm now mindful. Check. Right?
Yeah, or like I just read this book about mindfulness. I meditated once. Check.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, totally. The ego plays a, I'd say our ego is play a lot of, play a huge role in that. It's like, I just want to do it so that I could say I did it. I just want to learn about it so I could say, it satisfies some part of our ego to tick off the checkbox. Uh, Again, lacking intentionality, right?
for
Uh,
sure. Yeah,
Really great point, man.
yeah,
Consistent action, not just one action.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I also like I feel that I need to share too that and I do want to try to frame up this conversation a little bit as well of, my the reason why I wanted to talk about this was not to like, for lack of a better term, like shame people into it, right? Of like,
Totally.
you think you're doing so much work, but you're actually not. But just to bring it into the consciousness and shine light on it of, this is something that I have noticed in a lot of people, and I do think that is something that people should be aware of, and it's something that I struggle with a ton.
Mm,
And that's also why I like to use a different definition for education and broaden it. And we've talked about this a lot, where I'm very much in my head, right? Like I can intellectualize a lot of things and
yeah.
understand what's going on or why I'm feeling this way, or what I need to work on. However, actually bringing it down and embodying it and following through is a challenge for me a lot of times, right?
Mm, yeah.
And so, I am definitely, guilty of it as well, where I struggle with it. And now that I've noticed that, I'm trying to make a more conscious effort, and also, just kind of checking myself
Yeah.
of, all right, have I actually, worked through this, or do I understand it and have I intellectualized it?
Yeah. Love that, man. I'm thinking too right now. It's like it's better to go deep with as deep as we can with one, two, or three things versus try to just touch, 7 or 8 things for dopamine hits or something. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
how deep can we really go? How deep can we really go with a few things,
Yeah.
right?
And that's an interesting point too. And I can't remember when we were talking about it. I don't know if it was you and I, or if I was talking to somebody else, but I really, for me personally, I am all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that I need that because I get bored too easily if I'm just going super deep on a couple things.
Yeah.
However, for me, it's, you know I have a lot of things going on. However, hyper focus on one thing at a time,
Good.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like I might have 20 different things that I'm working on or like pondering about or thinking about. However, it's like, okay, for the next 2 hours, like I'm all in on this, right? Or like for this day or for this week or month, whatever it might be. That's kind of the main focus. And then when I'm not like, when it's not super on fire for me, I switch to another thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like whatever's kind of coming up, that's what I go on, but I hyper focus onto it. And even like in my tasks on the day, I'm terrible at multitasking, but I always have a ton of things going on, and I'm just able to switch very quickly.
Jared, I'm actually very curious on like what's on the other side of boredom for you. Like if you just allowed yourself to sit in that for not forever, for longer than you're comfortable with,
Yeah,
I wonder what would come out of that.
yeah,
Just
and
curiosity.
yeah,
Not
it's
a question, just
for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting. And when I say boredom, it kind of goes to frustration a lot of times. I very much don't like feeling like I'm forcing something,
yeah.
right? And so a lot of times it's like I don't feel like this specific thing
Mm,
is serving me or purposeful for me, and if I'm forced to do it, I grow to resent it very quickly.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why it's a lot more of, um, I know that I overreact to it. So
Yeah.
instead of like trying to force myself to work through it or to do it, if it's not like, time sensitive, call it, a
Yeah.
lot of times I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, let's put that on the shelf for now. And let's go work on this thing that is super, that I really want to work on, because I find that I'm a lot more productive that way too.
Totally.
Because when
Yeah.
I'm doing something that I'm not super interested in at the moment,
Yeah.
I get distracted. I like, find other things to do. And so it's something I've learned about myself, of trying to prioritize things that are time sensitive and important.
Yeah.
And then also allowing myself to explore what I'm interested in that moment.
Yeah. Really love that, man. A boundary that I've set for myself
Hmm.
around like taking things on or navigating multiple things, or and also like focusing on one thing. A boundary that I've set is like, I'm okay with having like 3 or 4 things going on in my life, as
Yeah.
long as those 3 or 4 major things kind of speak to each other in some sort of way,
Mm, gotcha.
right? So for example, like right now in my life, I have like coaching, so like leadership coaching for men. I have the Kings of Hearts, which is the non-for-profit men's mental health, and then I have Samurai Brotherhood men's groups,
Yeah.
right? Those are my big three in my professional life, and they speak to each other,
Yeah.
right? Like there's an underlying message around men's work or men's mental wellness on all fronts. And so for me, when I'm juggling those three huge planes,
Yeah.
they actually help lift each other up in a way. Like one lesson that I learn, or let's say for Kings of Hearts, I would have to educate myself on one aspect of something.
Yeah.
That education in that realm could benefit something in coaching at the same time.
For
So
sure.
it's like 2 or 3 birds, one stone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a super important mindset to have as well, of,
Mm.
you know, being willing to apply lessons that you've learned for a specific thing into all things. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that can also help people. Of, it's not like, I need to, okay, right now I'm worried about self-talk, right? And so I'm going to super study on self-talk, and then I'm going to worry about like, um like, I don't know, body image, right? And then super into body image, and then I'm going to worry about like leadership and super into leadership, or like self-awareness. And it's like, well, you can actually take all of those things and distill the lessons that will help in the other realms, right?
Yes.
I think taking away some of that pressure of, okay, like now, instead of books is just such an easy example, so I'm going to use that, right?
Is
But
it?
instead of having to read 5 different books, maybe 3 will do, right?
Yep.
3 will do as your quote unquote education piece. And now you can start stepping into those lessons and applying them to the 5 different categories that you want to work on, whatever it might be.
Yeah, love that, man. Something that I do with some of my coaching clients is, when we do a book study or something, when they
Mhm.
finish their book, they have to write. I get them to, as a part of their assignment, to write a report up for the book.
Okay.
So basically, what they do is they read it, they highlight what stands out, as most people do, like they highlight, underline, all that stuff. When you're done the book, go back through all your highlights and all your underlines, and actually write down some of the core lessons you have from that book in
Okay.
like a book report, right? So they would write up a book report, they would bring it to our session, and then in our session, what we do is we look at the book report, we would extract like 2 or 3 actionables that we could work on each week
Cool. Okay.
on that book.
Mhm.
So there's like you can see like the path there, right? It's like it's big integration, and not just the education didn't stop at the book ending, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I love that. And, that's the point I was going to make, of like, asking what that next step is, right? And, you laid that out of like, okay, so now we've learned this. Now let's actually, put it into action. So
Yeah.
love that. And, I mean, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, and it's been the general theme, but, why is it that you think, is there a specific reason that you think people sometimes fall into the trap of only educating and never actually following through or, implementing these lessons that they've learned.
Yeah, and I think the trap is that it's easier to talk about what you learn versus actually doing it.
Yeah.
And I think it's naturally a part of the human condition is to gravitate toward things that are easier,
Yeah.
right, or familiar. And so, reading about something and talking about it and having a great discussion, which I think is an amazing thing, it's just easy.
Yeah.
It's easier, I should say, versus actually, like I said, extracting lessons from you learn and putting it out there and into your life to actually improve it. I would also add to that, if you talk about something enough, it would turn into a way of being enough. But that's just, that's a greater length of time though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
So
that.
yeah, trap. Yeah, I think that's the trap.
Yeah. And I'm also a little bit angry because you stole the words out of my mouth.
Did I? Which ones?
Well, and that's, so my big one is one, a lot of times I think that people fall into the trap of feeling accomplished because they've understood it, right?
Yeah.
And it's that trick of like, oh, I've learned about it. And so feeling like that's the accomplishment, right?
Mhm.
Of like feeling like the work is done, that they've put in the work,
Mhm.
when really it's just kind of the beginning,
Mm.
right? And the bigger part, and the part that you spoke to, was that a lot of times, like with these subjects and with the work that people are trying to accomplish, like it's fucking hard, right? And
True.
so it's so easy to shy away from actually doing the work, because not only is it hard, but it takes a long time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To actually rewrite your psyche, to change the way you view yourself or think about yourself, or the way that you apply yourself in the world. Um, it's subtle, it's hard, and it takes a very long time to actually make that the new normal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of times, I think back to the start of my journey, with mental health specifically,
Yeah.
and you know feeling exhausted and hard, and it being difficult, and looking at it and being like, this is probably the hardest thing that I've done in my life, and still feeling like, 3 years later, like I've made a ton of improvements and I still have so much to go,
Yeah.
right? And it's slow and it's hard work, but that's the work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think we should shine the light on this too. It's like, learning something or educating yourself on something, it isn't about a start and ending. It's an ongoing journey.
Yes.
I think that's a story, that an opportunity to reframe that story for a lot of people that may be listening to this right now. It's like,
Mhm.
it's not about a beginning and an ending. It's not about once I'm done learning this, it's done, right? It is really about, it's a continuous journey about, hey, like, okay, this book just opened up 3 more doors to other areas that I may be curious about. Let's keep this going. Thank you, book, like, or thank you, podcast, like, bow to you for serving its purpose, right? Versus always feeling like it's a lose-win thing, right? It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a very difficult concept for people to grab onto as well. And I think a lot of that is from conditioning, right?
Yep.
Even thinking about school, it's a very clear cut, like,
Yeah.
you start this grade and you have these tests, and then you
Yeah.
have these finals, and then you've completed this, and now you're on to the next thing, right? And there's always an end date, there's always a due date, there's always very clear laid out steps. And to go from that, like your entire life, and to a degree, a lot of jobs are like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden now to be like, well, no, it's not like that,
Yeah.
right? Like you're saying, it never actually ends. It's
Yeah.
progress, it's a journey, it's not a destination.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
Jared's journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
um,
an important word as a part of your podcast, right? The
yeah.
journey, not
Yeah.
the destination. It's
Yeah.
not Jared's destination. Right? It's
Yeah.
Jared's journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I think luckily, I would say for me going into it was almost an understanding, um, of that, but coming from a different place of not knowing. I'm like, I don't know where the destination is. I don't know where I'm heading,
Mm-hmm.
so on a journey. I'm going somewhere. I don't know where. And that's really where it came from before I was able to really wrap my head around the fact that there is no destination.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to go like, so much came out of this last like 5 minutes that we are just talking
Yeah.
about. And one of the things that I really want to share, and I'm going to take it, it'll probably be a layer or two deeper here,
Yeah, for sure.
is that right now, like this world we're in, like that we're living in, the fast information, the social distancing, the all this stuff, right? Like
Mhm.
there's a lot happening right now. And I would say that we need less intellects and more embodied humans,
Okay.
right? Yeah, like in this world, right? We need to feel deeper. We need to be more sensitive. We need more attuned to our emotions and our health, our body, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah.
That's gonna make this world go like I would say like level up, right? Raising the consciousness in this world. And so, I think this conversation that we're having, this topic is so important. It's because we need less intellects, we need more embodied human beings. And I think the journey is to start from like the curious person to the intellect learning ways to integrate. That intellect then turns into the human doer, right? And then
Yeah.
the human doer does actions and tries things and experiments and explores. The human doer turns into an embodied human being, from, like you said earlier, consistent action on a week to week, day to day basis, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And for you, it's funny you bring that up because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently as well. And for me, where it comes into is again the idea of this time is a lot about the gray,
Yeah.
right? And what I mean by that is there isn't a quote unquote right and wrong right now,
Hmm.
right? And there's so many shades, and it's a lot of what is your risk profile and what do you deem safe.
Yeah. Totally.
And what I mean by that is, anywhere from, there's the scale of, call it locking yourself in a single room, never leaving, because, like, in all honesty, that is the safest thing right now. Right? Like, if you want the smallest chance of anything bad happening, technically that is the one, all the way up to, like going and spitting in people's faces. Right? And on that scale, everybody fits somewhere different, right?
Yes.
And it's, where do you feel safe? Where do you balance, yourself versus the safety of others? There's no, again, right answer of even looking to the information that comes out. It's changing. And I understand that because they're discovering new things, right? And the overall environment is different every single day,
Mhm.
right? And I think what that has all led to is there not being a quote unquote right answer.
Mhm.
And again, most people have that checkbox, that right answer, that thing that you should do. That's what they're searching for.
Totally, man.
And because that isn't there, I think that's what's led to a lot of the added stress of the overall situation, right? And again, it goes back to, this is what I deem, from all the information that I have, this is what I deem to be the right thing to do, which is different from yours.
Mm. Right.
And it's tough to say, and I don't know if we can say which one is right and which one is wrong.
Yeah. There's a lot of gray. There's a lot of gray. Like
Yeah.
here's another shade of gray. Let's call it that, right?
Okay.
That person who's locked at home and feels 100% safe, right?
Mhm.
The shade of gray, and another shade of gray within that, it's like, you're isolating yourself, but then the feelings of loneliness, or the feelings of disconnection start to rise. And I heard through a few sources already, they were starting to take, recollection of numbers of suicides in 2020, and it's skyrocketed. It
Mhm.
has skyrocketed because of isolation, and stress, not just isolation, but also stress, economic stress, all that stuff, right? And when you combine like economic stress, loneliness, and isolation all in one room, and you're like not seeing anybody, and is that safe? You know, it's like, is that a safe thing to do? Right. And so there's another layer there, right? It's so gray. There's so many gray areas of gray, right? So
Yeah.
I
And
wanted to say that because it's like something that I heard, and it actually like it landed deeply with me emotionally too. So
for sure. And like another question when I hear that, when I hear you say that, is I wonder too how much of that is things that have been covered up. And what I mean by that is like under the surface feelings that have been covered up that came to the surface because people were forced to slow down,
yeah,
right? Of now that, when you're off work for a couple months or whatever it might be, when, you have to spend a lot more time with certain people or a lot less time with certain people, how much of those underlying issues or troubles or struggles, came to the surface because you were no longer able to just keep yourself busy to put off having to deal with them, right?
yeah. I think that's a really good point, and I think it's like it's an and factor. It's
Yeah.
like all the stuff that we've been ignoring that's compounded and has been built, and
Yeah.
all the stuff that's happening on a that's changing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis.
Yeah.
It's different for everyone, but god damn, it's like and the social distancing and
Yeah.
the it's like it's a perfect storm if that individual doesn't have a community or source of positive support in some way,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
feeding into that and thing of I completely agree, and I think that feeds into the shades of gray again. It would be great if you could point to one singular thing and say like this is it, right? With really anything, but the
Yeah.
reality of life is everything is intertwined, right?
Yep. Yep.
Nature,
Exactly.
nurture, environment, people that are around you, everything, other
Yep.
people, what they're doing that affects you, everything is intertwined, and it's very tough to just point to one single thing and say that's it. Right?
Yeah, and to kind of bring it back to the point that kind of led us down this path of this conversation is like, to become a more embodied human being. So if we were to respect everyone's just like individual choice on whether they want to lock themselves inside or roam the world as they wish in this state, as a world is in this state, is
Yeah.
like to respect whatever decision and still prioritize embodiment. Prioritize integrating what we learn, because the person who is locked inside, I'm sure they have access to some sort of internet. They're learning, maybe they're learning, maybe they're reading or whatever. It's like, can you integrate that even if you're locked home inside, right?
Yeah.
And for the person that's out there too, it's like, okay, you're learning maybe not from a book or a podcast, but maybe you're learning from your experiences in the world. Can you drop down and integrate and get embodied? And so I think that wherever you are on the scale,
Mhm.
there is always a window of opportunity to get more embodied, to get more integrated.
For sure. And
Yeah.
so what are do you have some, call them tasks or strategies to help people actually get embodied, actually integrate these lessons that they're learning into their life?
Yeah. So like, kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier around like what my clients and I do, but from a logical standpoint, I'll do it twofold: logical and not logical. So like logical strategy or whatever would be like, if you're reading a book or if you're listening to a podcast, like, if you're reading a book, like if you're highlighting, go back to those areas where you highlighted and underlined, because you highlight it, like when you're reading a sentence and like you feel called to pick up a highlighter and just go, that means that it deeply resonated something inside your soul, inside your heart or your mind. Like
Yeah.
it landed. So like give it credit, because I can't even count how many times where I always forget to go back to the book that I just read, and I just felt accomplishment of finishing it and not actually going back and looking at what resonated with me,
Hmm.
right? What resonated with me.
Yeah.
And you know resonance is about feeling, so it made you feel something for you, enough for you to highlight it. So go back to those things, and inquire deeper on what that meant for you in that moment, or what that means for you now, and journal about it, write about it, right? Like, what is that? What can come out of that? If you're listening to a podcast, I know some people just kind of go about their day and like throw it on while they're driving. That's great. Try like listening to a podcast as if you're studying for school. Like, sit down, put the podcast on, and put like a notebook in front of you, and just start taking notes of what resonates.
Mhm.
Again, resonance is what you feel. So if it makes you feel a certain way, write it down, and then inquire deeper on what that was all about for you, right?
Yeah.
And so those are little tips and strategies on a logical standpoint.
Mhm.
From a more non-logical standpoint, around like embodiment and like taking what we learn and actually putting it into your body, is like meditation, breath work. You hear me saying this, you hear me preaching it all the time. It's a simple but ancient practice, breath work and meditation, and it allows whatever is in our mind to begin to like fall down in your body, right? And so I'll give you an example. Okay, you read something or you listened to something and it again resonated, and you're thinking about it in your head. Close your eyes. How did it make you feel? Because I said resonance is how you feel, how it made you feel, right? So what was that feeling? And can you identify where that feeling is in your body, and can you breathe it down into that place?
Yeah.
Right. Like, let that learning really sink in, and it's more of again, I say it's non-logical because it seems very intangible, but it is a practice, and I would recommend both, right?
Yeah.
Both to work together.
I love that. And, like I said earlier, it is something that I struggle with too. And so I definitely don't feel like I'm an expert by any means, but, some of the things that have helped me is, one, breaking the habit, right?
Yeah.
Of like doing things that you have never done or that like scare you, right? And like some of them, again, you called it, like when you're talking about the non-logical ones, of they seem like, they might seem weird or like
Yeah.
they don't make sense. However, but you can't explain the connection, but it's there, right? And so,
Yeah.
some of the exercises that we've done of even just like yelling into a pillow, right?
Yeah.
Process anger, right? Like screaming for you into a pillow. It sounds super random and like I don't understand how that would help or whatever it might be, but now you're physically forcing your body to do something that your mind understands. Your mind understands that you're angry, but let's actually see if we can try something else to actually feel it, instead of shoving it back down.
Love that you brought up anger, and I'm going to use that as an example right now. It's like, so anger is a form of energy, and energy can be worked with, right? Worked with. And so if you work with anger, like for example, screaming in a pillow, or like just channeling it in a creative way, anger is the gateway emotion. What we can turn it into is willpower.
Okay.
Right? We can turn anger into willpower, right? Like if you're pissed that you have all these toxic habits, and you're just like, fuck me, like, like, I am just dragging my feet for so long, and I know I'm playing small. I'm so pissed at myself. Like take a pillow, like, it's just like, let that energy just drop down in your body. Okay, now what are you gonna do with that energy?
Yeah.
Right now that you're shaking, it's like, okay, man, like I am going to, enough is enough. I love that saying, enough is enough.
Yeah.
Enough is enough. It's like, okay, time to do something about it. So that's a good example, I think, of like taking anger, dropping it down in your body, and then using it to turn it into willpower.
Yeah. No, I love that. And, it always comes back to action for me too. Right.
Yeah.
And so again, another example would be, like realizing that, I struggle with the idea that I want other people to see me as perfect. Right.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, okay. Like now I understand that. Like, okay, I need to just stop doing that, but that doesn't work. Right. It's like, okay, like, how are we going to do that? Okay. Well, let's try like, sharing my imperfections with people. Right. And it can be, and, it starts off with little things that like people don't think twice about, but, they're huge in your brain. Right. Of like, like my one shoulder's bigger than my left one, and feeling like, oh, everybody sees that, and like it's so bad, and if I show them that and tell them about that, always see it. And people are like, what are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's gone already, right? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but even tiny little steps like that,
Yeah.
shows you, and is action, is you actually moving towards it, you um yeah, making progress towards it, up to the point where after you've done little things like that for an extended period of time, okay, now I can actually, you know talk about things that I actually struggle with, the deep dark things that I feel like, make me not worthy, or make you hate me or look at me different, or whatever it might be, right? And that's the process through action of getting there and actually embodying it, as opposed to just, oh, I understand that I don't want people to see my imperfections, and now I'm good.
Totally. Yeah. I really love that, man. And I'll even share something right now too. When we first started our call, I was
Yeah,
like looking at my reflection. I was like,
yeah.
oh man, like this piece of hair is like really coming out really, it looks like little wings right now. It looks so weird. Like, you know what I mean? But like, I would imagine not many people would even notice until now.
Yeah.
But
It
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny too, because like that rings so true to me, and it's something that I've always struggled with. Of like, whenever I see a picture of myself, or whenever I would see a video or anything like that, I would be zoned in on like what I viewed as an imperfection,
Yeah.
right? Like, and again, something just like you said, it could be something like I have a hair out of,
Yeah.
like out of place, or like my shirt is like too far over one way, or like, oh, I feel like I look fat in this picture, right? And just only being able to see that, or like, random stuff like that. And again, it's, our mind knows that, of like, okay, like, now I've identified this problem, call it problem, or thing that I want to work on.
No
And
problem.
now how are you actually going to work on that, right?
Yeah.
Is it, showing yourself compassion through self-talk? Is it, staring at yourself in the mirror and just being like, okay, right? Like, I'm gonna try to accept this, or I'm gonna try to, change my view on it, whatever it might be. And again, I keep coming back to that, just that word of action. And it's gonna be slow. It's gonna be small at first. It's not gonna be overnight. It's not like an hallelujah moment and like I'm fixed the next day, right? It's like, okay, let's get back on that journey of like, let's go through the process.
Yeah. You know, those little imperfection things, like my reframe in the moment is usually, is this the time and place to make it about myself right now?
Okay.
I ask myself that in the moment. Because like looking at little imperfections or whatever is like it's making it about ourselves.
Mhm.
And nothing wrong with making things about ourselves, but is it the right time and place to make it about me right now, or is this moment about something else greater than me? And so, for example, me being whatever about my hair, it's like, no, like we're on this podcast and we're going into a topic that we're deeply passionate about, and let's go deep. It's not about me right now. It's about the people listening. It's about the topic. It's about all that stuff that's about to come up, right?
Yeah.
And so, reframing it so that you're not self-referencing in the moment,
Yeah.
powerful, hard
Yes.
practice,
Yeah.
but powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. That's so great. And so like one of the final things I want to get into here is, do you have any advice or strategies that you've used on, let's call it, managing expectations on self growth? Right? 'Cause, I feel like that's the trap that a lot of people fall into, is all
Yeah.
of a sudden it's like, I haven't made enough progress. This isn't going fast enough. I haven't changed enough. Um, and that might be what feeds into that over intellectualization as well. I don't know if that was a word, but we'll go
I
with
think
it.
good word.
um, you
You said
know,
it perfectly too. You didn't even stutter.
perfect. But yeah, of like, I haven't made the progress I think that I should have, and therefore I haven't done enough research,
Yeah.
or I need to read another book, or I need to listen to another podcast because I'm not where I want to be.
Mm.
And so I just saw the cattail right behind you. But yeah,
Yeah, it's usually around what 2 p.m. that he wants to come and like get attention. So
yeah. Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
But yeah, just managing those expectations and taking away the pressure of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think one of the things is I always like to lean into relationships and community, right? It's like, it's to have our expectations, to
Mm,
identify what they are, and to run it by somebody in your life. Be like, hey, this is something I'm working on in my life because I want it, because my intention is to grow. I have these expectations and I keep on being hard on myself. Can I run these expectations by you? And can you just be as honest as you can with me and tell me if I'm like just being too hard on myself? Am I stretching myself too far? And so like using your community and your relationship as mirrors for you is a very powerful technique
mhm,
on 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 like setting healthier expectations. Because I used to be of the mindset of like, if you don't want to like be hard on yourself, then set your expectations really low. But I don't believe in that anymore. Like I think that if you're in the game to like elevate, you can have challenging expectations for yourself. However, I think there's a part of us, and everyone's a bit different, but we're harder on ourselves than we need to be,
yeah,
right? And we need others to reflect that back to us, because we can't do it alone.
yeah,
Self-growth it isn't just a me journey. Self-growth is how you make people feel, how the impact you bring to your community, and how people feel around you on a day-to-day basis. Self-growth isn't just about us, right? It's about our impact. And so, if that's the mindset, or if that's a philosophy, then let's lean into the people in our lives, right?
yeah.
And so that's one big one.
Actually,
The
sorry,
other one I would say,
just before you go into that next one, a really quick note on
yeah,
that is,
yes,
I love that. And the other side of it too, I think, is sometimes it can actually bring us up. Of like, I feel like I haven't
yeah,
made a lot of progress, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" You're like, I've noticed it in you, right? And so sometimes they can give you that extra push too.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so I just wanted to add that extra, that flip, the other side of the coin too.
yeah, totally, man.
Yeah.
The connection's a little bit unstable right now. Is it unstable for you?
It's fine for me.
Okay, never mind. I think we're back now.
Cool. Okay. Sorry, keep going on
Yeah.
your second point there.
Yeah. The other point about expectations is around compassion,
Mm,
right? It's around compassion. It's around setting an expectation or a goal or a milestone that you want to achieve. And if you get there, and it's not what you expected, finding some place, some room in your heart to be like, hey, you know, did I give it my best? And if I did, let's, let's just move forward. Let's take some learning. And if I didn't do my best, just kind of curiously ask why.
mhm.
Why didn't I show up my best, right? And I think that's such a great thing to do, because expectations or not, I think compassion is such an important anchor, right?
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah,
like for me, that's the biggest one, and the biggest one I had to learn how to do is that self-compassion piece of like,
totally.
okay, it's okay that I feel like I'm not where I want to be. Tomorrow's a
Yep.
new day. I have an opportunity, like it's not over. Right. And
You're
uh,
not gonna die in the world. Yeah.
yeah, and which was the complete opposite of what I was used to. Um, from just my internal self-talk before that. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
compassion I would say is the biggest one for me, of
Mhm.
compassion with accountability, right?
Yeah.
Of
Totally.
um, showing myself compassion, but still holding myself accountable to push,
Yeah.
right? You know, um, yeah. So no, that's my
And
piece
you
on
know
it.
what, as well, Jared, it's like, I think expectations are a natural human thing, right? Like we're gonna have expectations. I would say though, it's like if we can live with a little less expectations, I think it would bring a lot more, create a lot more room for joy,
Mhm.
because expectations are, they're kind of in a sense a form of, judgment, or actually it can lead into judgment, right? And it's like, we're not doing ourselves any good on a self-growth journey if we're judging ourselves for where we're not. Um, and so, I heard this recently, not recently, I heard it earlier this year. It really stuck with me. It's like, what can I be versus what should I be? Right? Those two things are very different,
Yes.
and they both, they both technically, are part of your growth, right? However, one is a lot more open and curious, and the other one is a lot more judgmental and rigid.
Yeah.
What would you rather choose? What can this be? I'm going to move forward. I'm going to give it my best. What can this be? Versus, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to give it my best. This should be this way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it feels different, right?
Yeah. I was, like the word curious was what came to mind when you said that. I was
Yeah,
like, yes, like curiosity, like, not putting the pressure on it, of like open to the possibilities, as opposed to
yes,
being, also flexible versus rigid, as opposed to being rigid of this is what it should be. And
yeah,
almost like putting it into that like pass fail again, of
yeah,
that, if that's not what it is, I've failed.
yeah, totally. And another thing that's coming up now, it's like, yeah, I think you mentioned character before. It's like what you're made of when no one's looking, right? And so I think another aspect of character is like, what are you made of with the hand that you've been dealt that you didn't want? It's
Say
like
that again.
you've been dealt a hand that you didn't want. What are you going to make of it? That's a good testament of character,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
It's like unexpected circumstances just happen in your life.
Yeah.
Just came onto your plate. How do you handle this?
Yeah.
That like I think that's a trait. Like that's a character trait. Like that's a good determining factor of someone's character.
Yeah.
Right? Are they victimized because an expectation wasn't met? Or are they going to be proactive and be like, okay, this sucks, acknowledge the emotion, this
Yeah.
sucks, sad, or I'm angry. And what can we do with this, right?
Yeah.
What can we do with this now?
Yeah.
So,
How you how you respond to adversity. And what just came to mind there was like, a lot of times adversity brings out people's true character.
hell yeah, it does. It does.
And another story just came to mind randomly. It was there was this gentleman, I can't remember his name now, but he came and did a talk to a group of us when I was part of an accelerator program. And one of the most interesting people that I've ever met in my entire life. And he would do expeditions all the time, right? And one of the phrases that really stuck to me, um, I don't remember exactly what he said, but essentially the idea was, you know, I think it was around leadership, right? And like, everybody's
Hmm.
fine getting everything's fine when things are easy and everybody's getting along,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
True measure of leadership is, are you able to command these people when things aren't going right? And when somebody has died a few hours earlier on the expedition, and you need to get them through this so that nobody else dies. And
yeah,
I was like, wow, right? Like, bringing it in of that's, it's right. It's easy when things are easy, you know, um, we can, it's a lot more loose, right? Of just like, everyone going with the flow. You don't need
yeah.
to show your true character, as opposed to when things are really going bad or when things are very difficult. That's when the true character comes out. You can't hide it anymore, right?
I, I really resonate with that. Everyone's a good leader when there's rainbows and butterflies and sunshine, right?
Yeah.
But what happens when it's raining fire? What do we do?
Yeah, for sure.
Right? It's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
love that.
Awesome. Yeah, just anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap up here?
Mm, no, man, I think I feel pretty complete about that. I think we touched on a lot of other aspects too outside of our topic. Um, it was a great conversation. I feel quite complete.
Awesome. Me too. Always love having you on here, and always love having these conversations with you. Never know where they're going to go, but it's always somewhere good. So just appreciate you a ton, and we'll do this again soon. All right.
Hope so, man. Cheers.